Last video, I explained how you become an Elden Lord. This leads us to today's video. How do you grow spiritually? The divine warriors of the Hornsent are a symbol of power and purpose. For them, spiritual growth comes through combat and personal challenge. Each warrior faces a crucible, a trial that represents not just the endurance of the hardship, but the meaningful channeling of that hardship towards spiritual evolution. The crucible refines the body and the soul, much like the tangled horns of the Hornsent, which embody the trials that they have endured. The process of spiritual growth is not just about survival. It is about transcending hardship through purposeful struggle, as represented by the spiral, which reads, Superior sorcery of the Tower Priest, wielded as an incantation of the spiral. The spiral is a normalized crucible current that one day will form a column that stretches to the gods. But not every warrior understands this. Take Egon, whose relentless pursuit for Baal mirrors the tragic obsession of Captain Ahab for Moby Dick. Like Ahab's fixation on Moby Dick, Egon is consumed by vengeance. His spiritual path diverges from that of the Hornsent. Rather than using the hardship he faces as a means for spiritual growth, Egon's obsession blinds him, trapping him in a cycle of pain and destruction.
With a hail of harpoons!
Ahab is driven mad by his quest to kill the white whale. This mirrors Egon's fall. Both men lose sight of purpose, spiraling into obsession without growth. This is the danger of focusing solely on vengeance, of engaging in combat or trials without reflection or deeper meaning. Instead of growth, Egon, like Ahab, finds only ruin. The contrast between the divine warriors and Egon's spiritual growth, or lack thereof, reminds me of a conversation between Kratos and Atreus from God of War Ragnarok.
Father, what was Spartan training like?
Unforgiving.
Is that why you didn't train me like one? Did you not think I could handle it?
I did not think you should have had to.
Thanks.
Kratos knows hardship is needed to grow, but he also knows when it is too much, and that there are other, less destructive ways to grow that do not include avoiding the trial itself. In contrast, the Inquisitors of the Hornsent grow spiritually through a different kind of trial, a different crucible, coercive questioning. Their trials are mental, pushing individuals to their limits through interrogation and deep introspection. The golden arcs, which resemble barbs, are symbolic of this process. But it doesn't stop there. You may have noticed that the golden arcs closely resemble the Elden Ring in appearance. This is because the Elden Ring represents an ultimate truth, an eternal, immutable platonic form, which can only be reached through reason, or as Elden Ring calls it, the divine. Speaking of barbs, this imagery leads us to the idiom trading barbs, which refers to an exchange of biting or sharply critical remarks. For the Inquisitors, the barbs aren't just symbolic. They represent the cutting, often painful questions and criticisms that are central to their spiritual trials. The trading of barbs between an Inquisitor and the questioned is not just a verbal exchange. It is a mental and emotional test. In this way, the barbs are both tools of pain and growth, much like the tangled horns of the Hornsent. Just as barbs pierce the flesh, coercive questioning forces one to endure inner pain and reflection. This method reveals truth, stripping away falsehoods until only the core remains. However, like the divine warriors, the Inquisitors must balance this suffering with purpose. The spirit reminds them that the energy gained from facing a trial, a crucible, hardship, should be directed towards the divine. But there is a danger when suffering is endured without clear direction. Midra, unlike the ideal Hornsent, endures pain but without focus. He clings to Nanaya's entreaty to endure, yet his suffering becomes aimless. He embraces the idea that suffering builds character, but without challenging that suffering towards spiritual growth. His trials only lead to chaos. His failure stands in stark contrast to the Hornsent, who understand that enduring suffering is only the first step. True spiritual growth comes from directing that suffering toward a greater goal. The Lamenta and avoidance of truth. Yet even the Inquisitors fall short in some ways. The Lamenta, a hidden figure deep underground, reveals an unwillingness to confront deeper, more uncomfortable truths. We learn this from the Lamenta's mask, which reads, a stone mask twisted into an expression of rapturous grief, used while disrobed to transform into the Lamenta. This transformation tallies with the state of the denizens of paradise, but the people of the tower denied and hid it from the world. In their foolishness, they viewed true bliss with deep fear. The Lamenta represents a philosophy of passive suffering, completely different from the people of the tower. While the tower engages in coercive questioning, pushing for deeper understanding through trials, they ultimately stop short when faced with the most uncomfortable of truths. The Lamenta, on the other hand, embraces sorrow and suffering fully, even finding a kind of twisted peace in it. This is why the people of the tower hid the Lamenta. Unlike the active endurance of the tower, the Lamenta doesn't seek growth or deeper truth through suffering. Instead, they surrender to it. Their philosophy is one of resignation, where true bliss is found not in overcoming pain, but in accepting and becoming absorbed by it. The rapturous grief of the Lamenta's mask reflects this strange, melancholic peace, a peace the tower people couldn't face. So where the tower uses suffering, hardship, to push forward, Lamenta finds solace in stagnation. These are two opposing approaches to hardship. One seeks understanding and growth, but fears certain truths. The other accepts grief fully, but at the cost of progression. Both are bound by hardship and suffering, but their reactions couldn't be more different. Think of hardship like an approaching wave. The tower people resist the wave, striving to stand strong against it. But the Lamenta is like a pebble, letting the water wash over them. Instead of resisting, they are smoothed out by the current, slowly worn down by the sorrow until they find a strange form of tranquility. Despite their methods of coercive questioning, the Inquisitors show fear when faced with the true complexities of reality. Their avoidance of the Lamenta highlights a contradiction in their pursuit of truth. They may engage in questioning, but only to the extent that it doesn't force them to face the true complexities of their existence. This struggle within the Inquisitors reflects Plato's allegory of the cave. They are limited by the lack of true knowledge. They see only the shadows of truth. Much like the Inquisitors who, while probing for answers, avoid the most painful insights, they remain trapped in ignorance. Unable to leave the cave and see the world in its full light. This is the realm of shadows after all. For both the Divine Warriors and the Inquisitors, the journey from ignorance to understanding mirrors the ascent out of Plato's cave. The Hornsent, in their ideal form, seek to move beyond suffering, to not only endure, but to rise towards wisdom. Spiritual growth is complex. The Divine Warriors grow through combat, and the Inquisitors grow through mental trials. But both groups face danger in losing their way, whether through obsession as Egon does, or through the chaotic suffering of Midra. True growth requires both groups to not only endure trials, but to focus those trials towards a higher purpose. Without that focus, that reason, they, like the prisoners in Plato's cave, remain trapped in the shadows, unable to reach the full light of understanding. The Hornsent understand that life is full of trials. Each horn symbolizes not just the hardship endured, but the promise that more will come. Like barbs, these challenges pierce the soul, pushing one to reflect, grow, and evolve. But simply enduring pain is not enough. The Spira, the normalization of Crucible energy, teaches that suffering and hardship must be directed toward a higher purpose. True growth comes not from enduring alone, but from channeling that struggle into spiritual evolution, rising toward the divine. This is the lesson Midra failed to learn. His suffering without purpose became chaos. He endured, but his path lacked focus, leading to destruction instead of enlightenment. So the Hornsent pushed forward, knowing that life's trials, life's crucible, are inevitable. But with reason and purpose guiding their suffering, they transcend, enduring not just for survival, but for spiritual awakening. Thank you for watching. Comment, share, and like the video. I plan to make more.